computer, and go.
Hi, this is Rabbi Stephen Fuchs. I'm proud to be Rabbi Emeritus of Congregation Beth Israel, and I'm grateful to Rabbi Andy Flegel for the invitation to share with you during the days of awe as we stand for scrutiny before the Eternal One. On several occasions, Rabbi Flegel has indicated to me that she sees a special connection between me and the 23rd Psalm. And so I dedicate this reflection to her. Adonai ro'i lo echsar, pinot deshe yarbitzeni, al me menuchot yinachaleni, nafshi yishovev, yanheni b'maglei tzedek l'ma'an shemo, gam ki elech begeitz al ma'avet lo yiraraki ata imadi, shivtecha umishantecha hema yinahamuni, taroch lefanai shulchan neged tzororai, dishanta b'shemen roshi, kosi rivaya, ach tov v'chesed yirdefuni kol yemei chayai, v'shavti b'veit Adonai le'orech yamim. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He guideth me in straight paths for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou hast anointed my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Except perhaps for the Shema. The 23rd Psalm was the first prayer I ever learned. Throughout my public school years in East Orange, New Jersey, each morning began with a psalm read by one of us students. The 23rd Psalm was by far the most popular selection, although some readers chose number 117 because it is the shortest psalm in the book. Without even realizing it, I memorized the words in the King James Version that we read in school. The antiquated masculine language version that still speaks to my heart. As a rabbi, I invoke Psalm 23 at many funerals, pointing out that few words have brought more comfort to more people than these immortal thoughts attributed to King David as he sat among the Judean hills some 3,000 years ago. For that reason, I also include Psalm 23 as part of our Yizkor ritual on Yom Kippur. Yes, I employed these verses frequently, but the psalm only attached itself to my heart in the anxiety I felt leading up to my aortic valve replacement procedure in 1996. I had recently read The Relaxation Response by Dr. Herbert Benson, which offers a simple 4-step guide to meditative relaxation. A quiet atmosphere, a comfortable position, a mental device, and a passive attitude. Dr. Benson's formula would get me through open heart surgery, both in 1996 and 2012. It would also sustain me during a life-threatening strep infection that centered in my left hip in 2016, and following my painful rotator cuff surgery in 2018. For my go-to mental device, I decided to memorize the 23rd Psalm, so familiar to me in the King James English, in the original Hebrew. And now, as the days of awe approach in this unprecedented time of COVID-19, I find ever greater meaning in these words, although some of them are counterintuitive. Vicky and I have walked through the green pastures outside of Husum, Germany, near the North Sea, where sheep seem to outnumber people. What my eyes and nose beheld made abundantly clear to me that lying down in those green pastures was the last thing I would want to do. And yet, as is the case with biblical narratives, we must escape the literal to embrace the exquisite metaphor the psalm offers us. The idea that God takes care of our needs and offers comfort in times of trouble has great appeal. I marvel that throughout all the horrors history has imposed on our people, the idea still resonates that even after the Shoah, we can recite and on some level believe those words is a miracle to me. And yet we can and we do. Instead of blaming the Eternal One for society's ills, we turn to God for comfort and the strength to bear what seems unbearable. Certainly for me, when my pain and fear are very great, the psalm reminds me, my cup runneth over, and I count my many blessings. The prophet Zechariah, active in a time of calamitous upheaval, calls the Jewish people Asirei HaTikva, prisoners of hope. For me, the 23rd Psalm is the embodiment of that idea. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I trust in God's presence and God's protective care. At the same time, I express the hope that I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. But according to biblical and subsequent Jewish thought, dwelling in God's house is a privilege we must earn rather than a right to which we are born. As Professor Robert Alter points out in his commentary on Psalms, the privilege of enjoying God's presence in the Jerusalem sanctuary is a consequence of having followed the ways that God dictates to humanity. At this sacred season, we acknowledge that we often fail to meet God's expectations of us and our expectations of ourselves. One of my favorite stories tells of a monarch whose son was estranged from him, and he journeyed far away from the palace. The father, longing for his son, sent a message, "Return to your father." The son replied, "I cannot. The distance is too great." But the father replied, "Come as far as you are able, and I will come the rest of the way to you." Especially during times of pain and fear, Psalm 23 has been my mantra and my hope. Even in the face of death, God will comfort me. God will restore my soul. For my part, though, I must strive to be worthy of God's favor. I must do my utmost to fulfill my covenantal obligations as God articulated them to Abraham. Be a blessing. Follow God's teachings. Fill the world with righteousness and justice. I know I often fall short of fulfilling those sacred obligations. Still, I trust God will meet me halfway, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Amen. Thank you, Rabbi Flegel, for inviting me to present this reflection. For those of you interested, you can find it in written form on my personal blog. I've just posted it there, www.findingourselvesinbiblicalnarratives.org.